MMA guys are way, way more aggressive than boxers. A championship MMA fight is 5-minute rounds. That's 25 minutes of action. A 12-round championship boxing match is 36 minutes of action. That's 11 more minutes of high contact, explosive, high intensity work.
Chris Algieri is a former world champion boxer
and kickboxer turned performance coach,
sports nutritionist, author, boxing analyst,
and commentator.
Known for his intelligent and disciplined approach both in and out of the ring,
Chris has successfully transitioned from elite athlete
to expert coach and educator.
Boxing and kickboxing is very tough on your health. Do you think that affected your health today?
I broke my orbital in 3 places. I fractured my nose a bunch of places. I dislocated my jaw. I broke my hands multiple times. I've broken ribs. I've had multiple knee surgeries. But I can say, after all of that, I'm pretty damn healthy.
It's insane. If you could give only one health or fitness advice to everyone out there, what would it be?
The best health advice I can give is...
Welcome to Chief Life, the podcast that cuts the crap with science-backed insights on health, nutrition, and performance. Get expert advice, actionable tips, and everything you need to take control of your health and live your best life. Let's get started.
Looking still fit and healthy, like you're still a professional athlete now. So how old are you actually now?
I'm 41 years old. And I try to treat myself like I still am a professional athlete, whether I'm actually competing or not.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. Like, I want to pick your brains about, your health, fitness, about sporting, non-sporting health and fitness, all of that. So let's just jump straight into it. Like, I just want to know, to start with, when you look back at the fight world back in the day when you were a world champion, and the world of the fighting now, has a lot changed, like when it comes to nutrition and training?
Absolutely. I think it's the kind of thing that is it's very transient. When it comes to health and nutrition, and we see that even just in regular people. What's in, what's out, and we've gone through decades of changes when it comes to healthcare, nutrition, and I think. Listen, it starts with healthcare and medicine because there's way more money in that, and then it bleeds over into sports. And I think we've gone through a significant change over the years and over the decades, especially in boxing, because boxing is one of those sports where it's pretty old school. It's like, well, I can throw a towel over my shoulder and I'm a trainer. I can hold pads and I can walk in a corner. I got a bucket and I got some water and I can give my fighter a water and now that's a world champion. Okay, I'm a world-class trainer. There's not a lot of checks and balances to get to where you need to be in order to be recognized as a world-class a professional in boxing. It's a little bit of a wild, wild west. And I think over the years it's gotten a lot better with that. You're seeing a lot more strength conditioning, a lot more nutrition intervention coming into professional athletes, because these guys are now realizing that not only is this a career path, but it can be a multi-tens of millions of dollar business. Your body becomes a business. So a lot of fighters, I think, are taking that a lot more seriously in recent years, and they're starting to build teams. They're building out from the center, right? End of the day, the athlete is what matters. You got to go in the ring. You got to fight. You're alone. There's no one else in there but you. But everything leading up to that point, there's a lot going on. There's your head trainer. There's your second, who is another trainer that's involved in the whole camp. You've got your cut man, which is mostly for fight night. But everything leading up, you've got your strength conditioning coach. You've got your nutritionist. You've got your rehab specialist. You've got everyone taking care of your recovery. More and more, you're seeing more of these professional boxers, professional fighters, whether it's MMA, boxing, kickboxing, whatever, starting to expand their team and bring in more experts to make sure that their bodies are finely tuned machines. And I used to always think about a fighter as a racehorse. And racehorses can cost millions of dollars, and fighters can cost millions of dollars. And they have teams that are multi-millions of dollars. But I think we've kind of advanced. Now we're more like Formula One cars, which have cost tens, 50, $100 million. So there's a lot that goes into professional fighters now, because if you look back historically in the last 20 or 30 years across sports worldwide, the highest paid athletes are boxers. You've got the Canelo Alvarez's. You've got the Floyd Mayweather, and Oscar De La Hoya before him, Sugar Ray Leonard before him. Manny Pacquiao was in the mix of it as well. You look at all of the over the years, those guys consistently beat out even the soccer players, the golfers, the people that you would expect to be LeBron James, the basketball players of the world. So at the end of the day, fighters have the ability to be some of the highest paid athletes in the world, and they're not just a fighter, they are a business. So a lot of them are building teams around themselves. So I believe that nutrition, fitness, strength conditioning has adapted quite well and is advancing at all times. But if you ask me, I still think it's behind the times. Even though there's a lot of people making money and jumping on these opportunities, I still think there's a lot of gaps to fill to use more of a team approach and make sure that these athletes are the best versions of themselves come fight night.
Yeah, awesome. Interesting. I didn't actually know that boxers are the best paid athletes. I thought it was like UFC fighters. That's interesting. Anyway,
yeah, no. UFC fighters, absolutely not.
Really?
no.
Clearly.
It's funny because people always ask me,
idea.
like, "Oh, why won't you do UFC?" And I'm like, "Well, I always made more fighting boxing. The UFC fighters generally wanted to box. That's why you don't see any boxers make a transition to UFC. You're seeing UFC fighters make transitions to boxing later on. Like Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor was one of the highest paid UFC fighters in the world. He wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match. So that just gives you a kind of an idea of where the money's really at.
That's super interesting. So just to paint the picture, how many years did you fight professionally?
So I turned professional at 19 years old, and I retired when I was 38. So just under 20 years fighting professionally. I had 49 professional fights between kickboxing. I was a 2-time world champion kickboxer. I was a 1-time world champion boxer. And between the two sports, I had 49 professional fights.
Wow, that's impressive. And so how many hours a day would you normally train? And would your training routine look like, let's say, when you were boxing?
24 hours.
24 hours? What do you mean? 24 hours training?
24 hours. 24 hours was training camp. When I was in camp, every minute of every day was dedicated to what my sport was. Whether I was waking up in the morning and focusing on my first session a day, which might have been cardio, it might have been boxing, it might have been strength conditioning, depends on the day of the week. Regardless, so that was whatever that session was, whether it was 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours. That was the first session. Then I would go home. Recovery would start then, right? Nutrition, whether it was a shake with the supplements that I needed, the protein, and then I would go home and it was rest. Resting was part of training. So for me, every moment of the day was just in between training sessions. That's what boxing is. I mean, you're training 2 to 3 times a day. When you're not training, you're recovering, and when you're not recovering, you're eating. So, so that's why I always say, how often, how much training did you have to dedicate to your camp? It was 24 hours because sleep was important. That was always I was monitoring my sleep. I was making sure I was getting the sleep possible, whether they were naps, whether they were full-time, overnight sleep, whether it was recovery, ice baths, massages. My meals were all part of training too, because I would eat differently during camp. I'm a health conscious guy, but camp food was different than regular food. And of course, obviously the training hours in the gym.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds tough, but that sounds like my ideal life. I absolutely hate sitting in an office. I'm pretty sure you do too. But I wanted to ask, did you at the time have a nutritionist for yourself, or did you just do nutrition yourself?
I did it myself, but I had mentors. And I had people that had been in the sport, not even the sport. They were in nutrition, because I think even when I was coming up, sports nutrition for boxing was pretty infantile. And I would like to say that I led the charge a lot of it in terms of where nutrition has come in terms of boxing, because when I was doing it, there wasn't a whole lot of people out there. So I'm just going to name a few guys that really helped me out, who I think were also forefathers of the sport. Number one was Dave Scooter Honig, a Long Island guy who still works with a lot of top fighters. Tony Ricci, who really, really helped me out. He was one of my mentors that I spent a lot of time with working, seeing how he worked as a nutritionist. And he was one of the reasons that pushed me to actually be a nutritionist, aside from actually helping with my actual fight career. But I remember those kind of guys, they were coming up, and a lot of them, they came from bodybuilding, and there was a lot of that mentality. Low carb, water restriction for weight cuts, tons of protein, veggies, a lot of asparagus, those kind of things, like tuna, asparagus, dried chicken breast, and broccoli. Taking fish oil supplements, those kind of. That's how I kind of came up, and then I kind of developed my own thing. And it's funny because I really think that a lot of my transition from a fighter to a nutritionist, which got me a lot of gigs or jobs as a nutritionist and not a fighter, was based on my social media, because I was posting my food and my meals leading up to my weigh-ins. And people are like, how does this guy eat these kinds of foods but also still make weight? And it brought a lot of attention to how you could actually be, eat well and still make weight. The big transition for me from getting a lot of nutrition gigs and nutrition jobs was because of social media. I was posting the foods that I was eating and still making weight, and people are like, how does this guy eat all these good foods, and how does he eat good meals and still make weight? And I was the kind of guy who was big for my weight class, and I made weight pretty easily throughout my career. It was always super fit guy. People are like, how does he eat these meals? I'm like, well, you can. You just a lot of people didn't understand that it wasn't just a bodybuilder diet that was able to make you, be able to make weight. Yeah. You saw a lot of fresh leafy greens. You saw a lot of colorful vegetables. You saw, my protein dishes that were not just like dried chicken breast. And so I think a lot of people took notice of that, and they were like, whoa, this guy's doing something a little bit different. And this was as early as, when I guess Instagram really came out in the late 20-aughts and then into the 20 teens. But I think it's adapted a lot since then. You're seeing a lot of these guys who now have careers based on being fight nutritionists, where they live in camp and cook for people, and then go on to write books and become very famous on social media.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know that boxers are very well known for some crazy nutritional tactics, especially when cutting weight. What is the craziest thing anyone made you do in your boxing or kickboxing career in regards to nutrition and weight cutting?
Well, no one ever made me do anything, but I did oversee some people doing some crazy things in order to make weight. So it's a pretty common practice in fight sports where you get you do what's called a hot bath mummy procedure, and what you do is you get into a scalding hot bathtub, and you put Epsom salt in the bath. So you're changing the salinity of the bath water, which actually helps to pull the water out of your body, right? You're creating a concentration gradient in the water to your body. So you put a couple cups of the Epsom salt into the bath, or magnesium. I think Australians call it, and you put that in the scalding hot water, as hot as it can possibly be. So your pores open up, and then because of the concentration gradient, it pulls a lot of water out of your body. You sit in the water for about 10 minutes. I mean, Veronica, your skin is on fire. I mean, red.
Shit.
If it's not bright red, it's not hot enough. You get in the water.
Sounds terrible.
It's terrible. It's absolutely horrible. And you're doing that. Not to mention, you've already been restricting your carbohydrate intake for multiple days. You've cut your sodium for a couple days. You are super low carb. You've been training. You're dehydrated already. Now you're just pulling out the last bit. And I call this a sponge method. What you're doing is, all right, so you got a sponge, right? And it's soaked with water, just like a human body, just like your muscles are, because your muscles contain water. You squeeze out as much as you can, and then you wring it out. Right? So you work out, so you squeeze out the moisture, and then you wring it out. And that's what I considered the hot baths. You're wringing out the last bit of moisture that's in your body. So you take this super hot bath, you do 10 minutes in there. So now your internal body temperature is super high. Yeah. You're basically inducing a fever. Your body starts sweating. Your pores are open. The salt has opened up your pores. It's created a gradient for your skin to actually pour out this the water in your body. And then you get out of the tub, and you lay down, and they wrap you in towels. Your team will wrap you up. That's where the mummy effect comes in. You're wrapped in towels, and it traps the heat, right? Now you're sitting there, you're laying there, and it's trapped the heat in your body, but you keep cooking. Inside of you is cooking. And now the sweat, you're just sweating, you're sweating. And also you got the towels, so the towels are just absorbing your sweat. Then you get out. And you can lose 2, 3, 4 pounds per round of this. And guys and females will do this over and over and over again until they get to their desired weight and they go step on the scale. And that's probably the most aggressive. I've seen a bunch of crazy things with saunas and steam rooms.
Tell us. I want to know. This is so intriguing. Like, oh my God.
So I've worked as a nutritionist with a bunch of MMA fighters. MMA guys are way, way more aggressive than boxers. Boxing contests are a lot longer. A 12-round contest, it's 36 minutes. It's a very, very long time. So a championship UFC fight or a championship MMA fight is 5 5-minute rounds. That's 25 minutes of action. A 12-round championship boxing match is 36 minutes of action. That's 11 more minutes of high contact, explosive, high intensity work. So it is a considerably more metabolic sport. But also you can't grab a guy, you can't roll to the ground, you can't fall on your back and keep the fight going. In boxing, you have to be standing and fighting. So it's a different metabolic demand. So MMA guys will go a lot more aggressive when it comes to the weight cuts. And I remember working with a couple fighters who remain nameless. They were in saunas, like, wrestling and doing shots and shadow boxing, and then going out and doing the same kind of thing, the mummy method in between, going from hot tub to sauna to shadow boxing, back to the hot tub, to putting a bike in the sauna, wearing rubber suits the whole time. I mean, I'm watching people literally die in order to make weight. But then they make weight and they rehydrate and they go out there and they fight. It's a wild business. So
it's insane. Oh my God! And so people still do it now.
Absolutely. When the time comes, you got to make the weight. I always say that's the first fight, right? You got guys that. Because if you don't make the weight, you don't weigh in, you're either going to get a fine or the fight's going to get canceled. Yeah. So you have to make the weight. And some guys are willing to take the fine and so they can get the fight. And you got to think about it, Veronica. If you're making $10 million to fight on Saturday, and then on Friday you don't make the weight, and it's $500,000 a pound, you can come in a pound over and lose $500,000, and then you're going to make $10 million the next day. So your net earnings are still working out. Which is actually, I'm giving these numbers. They're not exactly what the numbers were last weekend, but it's a very similar situation that happened last weekend.
Wow, that's crazy. That's such a good insight. I had no idea. I knew about the sauna and that, but that mummy thing, that's the next level. Anyway, back to your career. One more thing about your past career. Did you have a mindset coach ever?
No.
No.
Again, I had mentors, and I had people that were. I think every boxer's coach is a bit of a mindset coach, because you have to deal with this person every single day, and that's one of the things. Yeah. I mean, I never did bodybuilding, but I've seen bodybuilders and the way they train and how important coaching is with that, and I think a lot of that has to do with mindset. Because you're with that person so much, right? With bodybuilding, you got to be in the gym day in and day out, and you're usually with that coach. With boxing and fight sports, it's very similar. You're spending a lot of time with one person. Actually, you're spending time with a lot of people, but there's one person who's always there, your head coach, and you're around that guy or that girl or whoever that person is. I mean, day in and day out. And when you're not with them, you're texting them, you're calling them, you're talking to them. They're calling you. They're sending you video to talk up, to view and then talk over. So that person almost always becomes your mindset coach. And if they're not, you probably need a new coach, because you're going to be spending the most difficult 36 minutes you could ever imagine. And the only person you get to talk to in those minutes in between those 36 minutes is that guy. And so if you're not on the same page with that person, if you're not intimately involved mentally, psychologically with that person, if that person is not in your ear while you're fighting for those 3 minutes, you probably need a new coach. So in terms of mindset stuff, I think the best coaches in the world best boxing coaches in the world are already mindset coaches.
Yeah, that makes sense. And did they give you any specific mindset techniques to practice yourself? And are there any that you still use today in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a big part of it was dealing with being uncomfortable, dealing with pain, dealing with uncertainty. And I think a lot of my coaches, especially early on, spent a lot of time making sure that I understood how good I was. Because I don't care who you are, there's the imposter syndrome that creeps in. Because if you're coming from any level of any sport, you're not always just going to be like, oh, I'm the best in the world. Hey, listen, some people are, but guess what? You're not. Like, you can be delusional, lie to yourself all the time. Like, yeah, I mean, once you realize the levels to any sport, and I mean every sport, when I say any sport, everything that you can potentially do, whether it is bodybuilding or fighting or running or anything, the levels that people are able to achieve are far above and beyond anything you could imagine. And until you see it, acknowledge it, experience it, you'll never know that. You don't know what you don't know. Ignorance is bliss. That's a saying for a reason. Until you see someone do something absolutely spectacular in front of your face, how could you possibly believe that? Because they essentially are superhuman. When you say, oh, if someone does that, that's like a superhuman thing. Then you see someone do it, and you're like, oh, wait. That's not superhuman. That person's a human, another person's a human. So if they can do it, I can do it. So there's a lot of that early on. And I think one of the major things that my coaches did early on was to let me know that I'm not an imposter and I am that good. And I need to realize it. And that was one of my superpowers, I think, when I was coming up. Because I told everyone in the world when I was 13 years old, everyone in my world, my very small world, when I was 13 years old in high school, that I was going to be a world champion. And not only was I going to do it once, I was going to do it twice, I was going to do it 3 times in 2 different sports. I told everyone, I was like, I'm going to be a 2-time world champion in kickboxing, and then I'm going to transition to boxing, and I'm going to be a world champion in boxing, and I'm going to make $1 million before I'm 30 years old.
Wow,
and
that's crazy.
I said, those are exact details of goals that I had when I was 14 years old. Yeah. And I told everyone around me. I told my parents, I told my brother, I told my best friends, and everyone was like, cool, man, that sounds awesome. You know, like just giving you but my coaches told me that not only was I going to do that, but I was going to do a lot more. I didn't believe them at the time. I should have, because they were right and I was wrong. I set my goals way too low because I did everything I said I was going to do. And then I was like, oh, now what? I gotta make new goals at 30. So yeah, I think a lot of it came down to the psychological of actually understanding that whatever goals I had manifested in my mind or developed in my mind, that could actually manifest into reality.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know that you wrote a book for fighters about it. Yeah, what is it called? So You Want to Be Fighter? Is that it?
Yeah, it's called So You Want to Be a Fighter. Yeah, and it's funny. It actually came off of a social media post. And,
really?
Yeah. So I posted this photo of my face after one of my fights. I broke my nose in the first round of the fight. I think it was an 8-round fight, and I scored a knockout. We were in the Garden at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and I broke my nose in the first round. And I don't know if anyone's ever broken their nose. You tend to get black eyes on both sides. So I break my nose in the first round. All right, and then your blood starts to swell into the side of your face. I've gotten a lot better since then. And at that time, my face swelled up, and it was a tough fight for sure. But I won by knockout. And so many people were like, "Oh my God, your face! That must have been such a tough fight and such a hard fight." And I was like, my response was, "Yeah, every fight's hard. I've had fights harder than that one where my face didn't look like that." But people don't understand that. So I said, "All right, well, if everyone's reacting to that visage, everyone's reacting to that image, let me just touch your brain a little bit." I wrote this big long thing about saying, "All right, so you want to be a fighter, huh? Well, are you willing to do this?" Because this apparently gets everyone to kind of go, so if you really want to be a fighter, and this was a fight that I thought was actually not that difficult, and a fight that I won by KO, like, if you really want to do this, and this is actually one of the easier nights out, are you sure you want to do this? And I wrote this big, long speech about, if you really want to be a fighter, it's going to be hard, you're going to fail, it's going to hurt a lot, you're going to fail. You're going to fail again, and you're going to fail over and over and over and over again, and it's going to hurt. And there's going to be a lot of pain. There's going to be scars. There's going to be blood. There's going to be damage. There's going to be things that are never going to go away. Are you really willing to do that? I know you want to say you want to do this. I know you're going to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Okay, what happens when you fail? What happens when you try and you fall short? What happens when you try and you fall on your face? What happens when your face looks like that? What happens if everyone around you looks at you and goes, ooh, geez, why are you doing this? Then what? And that was the whole idea behind that post, which eventually turned into a book. And the idea of the book is I interviewed 18 world champions. And I wanted them to tell their portion of their story where it was like that, where it wasn't them holding up their belt and being a world champion and flexing and making all their money and being in their fast car and with their families. I wanted them to tell the point of their story where they were supposed to win and they didn't, where they were supposed to win and they did worse than people thought, where they were supposed to have it easy and then they broke their face. I wanted that. Or you broke your hand or whatever, or you couldn't fight for a long time because of whatever. And it was just overcoming situations because every champion has that story. So it's basically 18 chapters of champions telling the stories of overcoming things. I think it's a really inspiring group of tales, which is essentially what the book is. It starts with my tale, and then it goes into all these other champions. But it's funny. It came off a social media post.
Wow.
And a broken nose.
Awesome. I definitely couldn't be a fighter. I only looked like you in the picture once in my life, and I never want to experience it again. Not for $10 million. That's crazy. So like boxing and kickboxing, it's very tough on your health, like all the impact, all the concussions, injuries. Do you think that affected your health overall? Like today, do you feel any effect from it?
So I broke my orbital, my right eye. I broke my orbital in 3 places. I fractured my nose a bunch of places. I dislocated my jaw. I broke my hands multiple times. I've broken ribs. I've had multiple knee surgeries. And but I can say, after all of that, after I just listed all these ailments, I'm pretty damn healthy. And you mentioned about how I stay athletic and I still look like I could probably still fight, which people ask all the time. Like, oh, you look like you're in shape. Are you training for fighting? I'm like, no, I'm training for life, man. This is the way that I live. I'm blessed to be in my 40s and to still be as athletic as I can be, based on how dangerous my path has been and how many injuries I've actually incurred over the years. But I've always kept myself in shape, and I think diet, nutrition. Making sure that recovery is a big aspect, where sleep has been something that I've really been focused on for a long period of time. Basically, as soon as my 30s hit, I was like, all right, sleep is really important. Well, mid-30s. But so I think a lot of that has really helped to keep me preserved, because I know a lot of guys my age who are pretty beaten down. And not that I'm not. Like I said, I have a lot of injuries. But I don't focus on them. I don't think about them. I don't let them change my mentality. They might change the way I do certain things. Mm-hmm. But in terms of who I am as an athlete, I don't allow anything from the past to affect what I'm doing moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you look amazing. Like, people can't see it because right now they can only see your face. But Chris looks amazing. So what do you do for training and nutrition nowadays? How often do you train? What do you do?
Oh, I train every day. I do something every single day. Yeah, I train every day. And so I'm probably in the boxing gym still, even though I'm retired. I don't spar anymore. I don't get punched in the head anymore. But I still hit the bag. I still do pad work. I still train. I'm trained amongst a lot of young fighters who are still fighting. I'm probably in the boxing gym for 3 days a week. I do a lot more strength and conditioning than I used to. I try to focus on doing long runs here and there, because people ask me, oh, do you run like you did when you were fighting? I'm like, no, I don't run as often, but I run a lot more. And what does that mean? So, like, I'll do 10, 12-mile runs. I'll do 13 mile. I'll do a half marathon. I'll do a half marathon. I try and do a half marathon at least once or twice a year, like competitively.
Yeah.
But on my own, like training-wise, I'll still do 10, 12, 15-mile runs, which I never did when I was fighting. It just doesn't carry over to the sport. It's a very explosive sport. Those long distance runs are way too. They take too much out of you in a training week, in a training cycle, in order for you to be out there and be sparring. Because when you're training for a fight, you're focused on sparring because that's the most important thing. It's the closest thing to fighting. And in terms of the endurance, more than 5 mile runs don't really make a whole lot of sense. So I do a lot longer runs now that I'm retired. I don't run as often. I bike a lot more. Like I said, I in terms of my weight training now, I'm a big kettlebell guy. I like kettlebells. I like the athleticism to it. I like the fact that you need to be focused on your technique. I'm not just going in there just throwing iron around and tearing a pec or tearing a bicep, because in your 40s when you're lifting heavy, I know way too many of my friends and family that are around me that go and do what they used to do in the gym in their high school years, and now they just tear a pec or they blow a bicep out or pop an Achilles. So I don't do that kind of work anymore. That's why I like kettlebells, because it's a lot more athletic, a lot more fluid. You can still get really heavy, but technique is really important. You need to be locked in, and I like that because that's how boxing was. Boxing is a very, very technical sport, and if you're not doing things right, you're going to get hurt. So for me, kettlebells in terms of strength conditioning are probably my favorite modality for strength work. In terms of conditioning, biking, running. I don't swim like I used to. I used to swim a lot during my boxing career. I don't swim as much anymore. That's only because it's just time. I mean, I would swim, but I just and then in terms of nutrition, I don't know. I don't know how much.
You eat a lot of meat. I always see the best meat dishes and steaks on your Insta.
The difference is just my carb intake. I just eat less carbs. I think I eat all the same kinds of foods. I always ate meat when I trained. I was never a vegetarian. I was never a vegan. I always ate a lot of meat during my fight career. My mother's from Argentina. Meat was something I grew up with. I was a meat eater from a young age. But now, with less output, with less consistent training, I train every day, but it's not like I used to. It's not 4 hours a day. It's 2 hours a day max. It's 90 minutes a day. Sometimes it's 30 minutes a day. I don't need as many carbs anymore, and I just kind of focus my intake based on my output. And if I have a long day, if I have a 10-mile morning, I'm going to eat more carbs that day. But if I have a 30-minute strength conditioning session in the morning because I have to work the rest of the day and I don't have the time to do that, or I'm traveling, for instance, no, I'm just going to focus on my protein. I'm gonna have my my meal to goes. I actually have some broth right here. I drink my protein. I drink my my salt, my sodium.
Yeah.
Or if I'm on the road, I have my collagen bars, and I have my dried meat. You guys call it biltong. We call it jerky. But
Chief biltong. It's jerky and biltong are a little bit different. They're made in a different way. Biltong.
Oh, can you actually explain that? Okay, so explain that to me, because I don't know. I have my chief products, and I remember some of the older ones were biltong, and now I have some.
Yeah, so biltong is air dried. So it's like hanging in a room and drying for a few days. So it preserves all the nutrients, and then it gets chopped up and mixed with fresh herbs and spices. While jerky is usually marinated in marinades, they're full of either synthetic additives or sugar, and then it gets dehydrated. And because it gets dehydrated, you damage some of the nutrients because it's heat, so you damage some B12, and because of that, it's also more like chewy and tough. So biltong is air dried, and jerky is dehydrated at temperature. Yeah.
Boom. Now we know. Thank you.
Yeah,
See, I'm learning on this podcast as well, because I've actually made my own jerky, but I dehydrate it.
So that's biltong. Oh no, that's jerky. Dehydrated.
No, it's jerky. But then my grandfather from my Italian side used to air dry his meat, so he made biltong.
Yes, he
didn't know that. He didn't know the name of it, but he used to make biltong because he used to air dry his meat, and then I actually dehydrate because I have I use
it's still good,
machine.
but
Yeah, but it's not the same.
Interesting. So, and do you take any supplements? Like, do you believe in supplements you take? What do you take? What do you recommend?
So Other than obviously, I want to eat the most real foods possible. We talked about even the chief products, the collagen bars and biltong and jerky. That's like my on the go stuff, which is not a supplement; it's food. But I even think like whey protein's food. Like people are like, oh, what's your supplements or whey protein? I take some whey. I don't use a ton of it. I use maybe once a day. I used to use a lot more when I was training. But I even consider that food. But creatine monohydrate is my number one be all, my favorite supplement on the market in terms of sports nutrition or ergogenic aid. It is the most highly researched and scientifically backed supplement that is out there. It's good for your brain. It's good for your body. It's good for your muscles. It's good for performance. It's literally good for everything. It's good for sleep deprivation. It's good for being hungover. You name it, it is good for you. So if you're not taking creatine monohydrate, if you take nothing away from our talk right now, go take some creatine monohydrate. My parents are on it. My family's on it. My nephews are on it. My children are on it. It's good for everybody. And if you don't believe me, go look up. There's a lot of new research coming out that is fine for every age. So creatine monohydrate is my favorite. And then, as just being an older male, I've gotten into some other things. All right, so let me go back to my fight career. So during my fight career, creatine monohydrate for sure. I started using amino acids later, when I was starting to cut weight, because, I didn't want to have as much calories. I wasn't focused on getting like a whey protein right before I go to sleep. I would amino acids just to maintain my amino acid level, BCAAs during overnight or in between workouts when I was really starting to cut down my calorie intake. So I would keep the BSAs in there just to maintain as much lean tissue as possible. Glutamine was really important for me, I thought, because it helped my gut health, helped my recovery, helped my reintroducing glycogen into my muscle stores for recovery. I was doing an omega-3 supplement, fish oil for a while, but I had a little bit of trouble with bleeding. I tend to have kind of thin blood anyway, but also I'm a fighter, so getting hit and bruising was a little bit. So I had to pull back on that one a little bit during my career. That's when I've reintroduced now that I'm older. I'm not getting punched anymore. That was important. And then I'm trying to think what else I was taking when I was in my career. It feels like it was so long ago. I just retired a couple years ago, but it's a long time ago. Beta alanine was a big one for me. That was just an endurance boost, man. What I called that my third lung. Beta alanine. Administration for beta alanine for a professional athlete is pretty tough because there are side effects. You get the tingling, the parathesis in your hand. It's just everything starts to kind of tingle, and it has to be consistent. It takes like 3, 4, 5 weeks of proper dosing in order to see an effect. But God, when that effect hit, it was real.
How did it make you feel?
A lot of tingling. It was very uncomfortable. Depending where you get it, you kind of get flush, almost like a niacin flush.
Okay.
Some people get it in different places. I used to get mine a lot on my forearms. My forearms and around my ears, like on my neck. This was very uncomfortable when that would happen. A little bit of my back, on my traps. Some people would get it in their face. I know those people had a really hard time actually consistently doing it. But I would mix it in with my post-workout protein shake morning and night. I would do whey protein, I would do glutamine, I would do creatine monohydrate, and I would do beta alanine. And the thing about beta alanine, it's dose dependent. The more you can get in, the better it is. But the more you put in, the more of those side effects you get. So it's
But then they go away after 3 weeks, yeah?
Not necessarily. It depends. You would get more used to them.
Yeah.
But I remember even working with other athletes, and I was like, hey, guys, listen, this is the iron lung of supplements for endurance athletes. You got to do it. I know it sucks. Trust me, it helps. But it was a fight to get a lot of athletes to do it because they were so uncomfortable. And post-workout, you're uncomfortable anyway. When you train really, really hard, you're uncomfortable anyway. You want to be satisfied. You want to feel good. And you put something to your body that kind of makes you tingle. I understand. I always did it. It worked. It was great for me. But I know it can be very difficult for athletes. But listen, suck it up. Take your beta alanine. It's important. It actually
I want
helps.
to try it now. I want to try it.
If you're an endurance athlete, you are, you absolutely should. Absolutely should. Now, since then... Now, I'm in my 40s. I'm much more aware, even more aware of my hormones now than I was then, which you'll love this. So I used to get my hormones tested yearly when I was training. I was almost always high, low, suboptimal testosterone level during my career because I was burning through everything all the time. And I remember going to a bunch of doctors and seeing people, and they were like, well, how do you feel? And I was like, I feel fine. They're like, well, do you have trouble getting motivated to go train? No. Do you have trouble, being sexual with your partner? No. Do you have trouble sleeping at night? No. Do you have trouble staying lean? I'm like, I got an 8-pack. And like, no. And they're like, do you have trouble building muscle? I'm like, no, I'm as muscular as I could possibly be. They're like, well, okay, you have no symptoms of low testosterone. You're probably just using it. Okay, so that was my whole career. But also, I was always making weight. So I think it was about 8 months after I retired, and I stopped focusing on making weight. I was still working out, but nothing, whatever. And I was just like, I was worried. I was like, oh man, here we go. I mean, I'm not training. I used to be. My bloods are all going to be weird. I took my blood. My testosterone doubled,
Wow.
doubled from what it was when I was in my career to actually. And I was like, oh wow, okay. So I was just burning the candle at both ends at all times, just completely running myself into the ground, which was necessary for me to be, what I was. Which is why athletes use testosterone, which is why athletes quote unquote cheat. They use PEDs. Yeah, because you're burning everything through. You got to train hard to be good. But you need to be super physiological in order to be the best of the best. So now I focus a lot more on fertility stuff, just being a man in his 40s who is not training as hard as I used to be. So D-aspartic acid is a big one that I use. And that's every day. Tongat Ali, making sure that this is all like fertility, sperm quality stuff, because if you really look at longevity, if your sperm's good as a male, you're good. If your sperm is healthy, you're healthy. So I really focus on that kind of stuff. Selenium, magnesium, zinc, tons of zinc, vitamin C, tons of vitamin C. I'm back on the fish oils now. I'm not worried about the bruising as much.
Until
still
you get
on
punched.
Yeah,
by a
until I get
girlfriend or
punched.
something.
Exactly. I'm trying to think what else am I on at the moment. And then I have my morning routine. I have my nighttime routine in terms of my supplements. Selenium, magnesium, zinc.
Collagen?
Well, collagen is that's another one. It's just in my food. It's just like what I eat day to day. Like, how, I mean, for people who don't follow me, like I post a lot of the food that I make throughout the week. I mean, day to day. And, I do eat a lot of, fibrous meat. I eat a lot of meat in general. I drink my broths. I make my broths whenever there's a carcass. We're cooking down the broth and making sure that there's good collagen production in there. I eat my Chief collagen bars, which are a super easy way to get it in. I also you guys have the collagen additive, the protein, the powder, which I put into my normal protein shakes anyway now, just as an extra addition on top of my whey, on top of the protein that I put in there, just to add a little extra collagen. Because another thing I think is really important as you get older, like in your 40s, especially when you're an athlete your whole life, these things, these joints, these all get banged up over the years, especially when you're aggressive with your training. And just making sure that these things stay fluid and I can be loose. Collagen helps with that. Hydration helps with that. Good fats help with that. And making sure that I'm putting the right things into my body so it can work the way that it did when it was younger. I know this thing is not the same. This machine that I'm in is not the same thing I was 20 years ago. I'm well aware of that. But this thing works pretty damn good, because I've oiled it and I've fed it right and I've fueled it right. So I think that's a big part that a lot of people miss out on. It's not a what can I do right now thing. It's a what have I been doing. I need to be consistent with it. I need to keep doing it.
100% agreed. And you also wrote a book about cooking, yeah? Like the Fighter's Kitchen? Is that
The Fighter's Kitchen. That was my first book. We're lucky. It's like everything's right here.
Yeah, I love it. So,
The Fighter's Kitchen. This was the first book. This was a funny way that this came about. So I was always posting, again, this is the advent of basically Instagram and social media, because social media became a big portion of my fight career early on. Facebook, I'm aging myself now. Facebook was like just coming out, and I was in college, but I was fighting in college, and I would sell tickets through Facebook. I would create an event page, and I would be like, all right, Chris Algieri's fighting I was fighting near the college that I went to. I was like, I'm fighting down the block. And if you want to go, message me and we'll meet up and do tickets. And I would sell them tickets and T-shirts and whatever else we were doing, and everyone would come to the fights. And
so ahead of your time.
my professors would come to my fights. The students in my classes would come to my fights. So I built a good following with social media early on. And then we had that switch over from Facebook to Instagram. And then Instagram became more of like just a photo thing. It was all photos. Everything was photos. So it was a little bit different. You couldn't create like an event page. I couldn't like invite people kind of thing. So it came a little bit different than that. And then I started posting more of what I was doing day to day. And my cooking really showed up because I cook every day and I've always cooked for myself. So I was in training camps living by myself. I was living in hotel rooms and I would buy a burner plate and a frying pan. And I would just I would bring food, and I was super broke back then, and I would just have a pound of rice, and I'd cook rice, and I'd fry eggs, and I'd have avocado, and I would make it, and I'd put it together, and it looked okay. It looked good. Even though it was very, very minimal in terms of what I had available to me for cooking devices and what I had available to me in terms of the kinds of food I had. Tuna and chicken breast and meatballs and whatever. Yeah. And eggs, a lot of eggs, a lot of toast. But people started to get kind of noticed on it. Oh, this guy looks like he can cook a little bit. And then Instagram started to get better and better and better, and videos and these kind of things. And then more and more, I was starting to actually accrue recipes. And I started to write them down a little bit, and kind of, they were mostly up here. And then I had a publisher reach out to me, like a big publisher, an American book publisher reached out to me, and they were like, hey, we got an idea for a book. We were thinking, like, we'd want you to author it. We think you'd be great for it. And I'm like, okay, what kind of book? And they said, a cookbook. And I was like, shut up. I'm like, I got recipes, man. I've been working on a cookbook on my own. And he goes,
that's
cool.
epic.
How many you got? And I was like, I got like 20 good ones. And he's like, we need 100. And I was like, wow. I was like 100? Okay. And he goes, are you in? I go, yep. Yeah, okay. We discussed the signing agreement and the upfront and all that. And I was just like, all right, 100 recipes. And then I just went to work. Just writing everything down. That's another thing. Listen, I'm a cook, not a baker. I never wrote anything down. It wasn't like, this is 1 tablespoon of cooking powder. This is a half a teaspoon. It was always, I'm a cook. I'm like, bing, bing, bing. You can't write a book like that. It has to be measured out. So I had to go through all 100 recipes and measure absolutely everything out. Go back and forth and test. This book actually did really well. It still sells like crazy. It's still, it's a good thing about books.
I bet it does, because it's written by men. Like most guys struggle with cooking, and they don't want to buy Chick's cookbook because it's too complicated. I didn't see your book, but I'm pretty sure it'd be simple and
so easy,
delicious.
Veronica, I should write a new one because I've gotten a lot better at cooking.
Yeah, like your videos on Insta, I'm salivating every time I look at it.
This is like so basic from what I do now.
Yeah, it looks epic. Love it. Well done. So I have a question that I'm dying to ask. Do you actually know how many concussions you had throughout your career?
No.
Did you have many?
Yeah.
Countless. And did you do anything to prevent the symptoms or improve the symptoms? Is there any nutritional or any other techniques that you'd use?
Creatine monohydrate is across the board the best supplement you can ever take for anyone who has any kind of impact in whatever they do. Creatine monohydrate, and not only will it help you recover from a concussion or concussive symptoms, it's neuroprotective. So the idea about creatine is it provides ATP, the energy unit for brain cells. Your brain cells need that, and when your brain gets damaged, any kind of brain cell in your it requires energy. So anyone who's ever listening, who's ever had a concussion, whether you know it or you didn't, we've all been in our head before, whether you're a kid or an adult or an adolescent, whatever. You've probably had a concussion and probably didn't even know it. A lot of times what happens when you have a concussion is you get hit in your head, boom, you get knocked on your noggin, you get a little woozy, you see a flash, whatever. Whatever you might think a concussion is, it wasn't a concussion. It was a concussion. Every single time you've had a thought whether that was a concussion or not. It was. Every single time you've been knocked on your head and you felt more than just like, ow, my scalp hurts, you probably had a concussion. So if you see a white flash, if you felt dizzy, if you had any kind of symptoms later on, like I'm a little off balance, I can't really sleep, I feel more emotional, all of those are post-concussive syndrome symptoms. And whether you know you had one or not, you had one. And they will affect you potentially. Your body's ability to recover from them matters. There's a lot of factors that matter. A lot of it matters with what you do, primarily exactly what you do after the actual impact, the kinds of foods, nutrition, the hydration you put into your body immediately after, and it does take a few days depending on the severity of the actual concussion. And I've been through this. I've had some minor, many minors. I've had some severe, and I've been able to experience what from the former to the latter feel like. And I've had some bad ones, especially later in my career, where I was like, you know what, I need to actually focus on recovering right now. Yeah. And I actually put together a little checklist of things that you should do depending on what you have available to you in terms of how you should really focus on recovery. Number one is rest. You just have to rest. And I know there's a lot of hard chargers out there. I know you're a hard charger. I'm a hard charger. Our friend Avril is a hard charger. People listening to this podcast are definitely hard chargers. Listen, if you fall off your bike, if you get punched in your head, if you hit your head getting up underneath a rack and hit your head on a weight, whatever, and you are starting to feel dude, take a chill pill, relax, rest, take some time, put yourself in a dark room, because your brain needs rest. When it gets damaged, everything else in your body shuts off. The supercomputer needs energy. The rest of your body goes, it shuts everything down. If you feel really tired after getting hit in your head, you have a concussion. Your body is literally telling you, we need to focus all of our energy for this thing to heal. So lots of rest, lots of laying down, not a lot of light, not a lot of screens, not a lot of phones, not a lot of talking, not a lot of interaction, anything that makes your brain work fast, no reading. Anything that strains your eyes, visual stuff, auditory stuff, mental stuff. You're not going to do crosswords. You're not going to be doing your accounting. Those kind of things all affect your brain. They're all making your brain work harder than it needs to while it's in a resting recovery phase. That's all just stuff you can do physically in terms of actually your normal behavior. Yeah. Next, making sure that you are getting tons of hydration. You're upping your protein. You're lowering your carbs. Carbs cause inflammation. Carbohydrates cause inflammation. Carbohydrates cause inflammation. I'm saying it over and over and over again. Carbohydrates are inflammatory, which can be a good thing for athletes who are training really hard. Not a good thing for normal people who are trying to recover from injury. So cutting down your carbs, focusing on good fats, focusing on your protein levels, making sure that brain can heal properly, and you're minimizing the inflammation. There's already inflammation going on. You got hit in your head. Your brain hit your skull. There's already inflammation going on. We need to chill all that out. So hydration is important. Lowering your carbs is important. Upping your protein is important. Upping your good fats is important. Next, I mean, if you can get your hands on some creatine, absolutely hit that dosage. High levels of vitamin C, making sure that you can get those antioxidants into your system. Reducing oxidative stress. Again, I mentioned, reducing carbohydrates. Getting into a bariatric chamber. I know that's typical for a lot of people. I know it can be very, very expensive, but it will pay off big time. I've had a few concussions late in my career. I got right in that bariatric chamber. I did a couple weeks worth of that. I mean, the recovery is so much shorter. You're just essentially what you're doing is you're increasing the available oxygen that's going into your body, because oxygen can heal all of your muscles, every single tissue in your body, especially your brain. So you're changing the pressure within the tube of the bariatric chamber, but you're also upping the amount of oxygen that's in the air. So your body's ability to absorb oxygen goes up, plus there's more oxygen in the air. So you're getting double the amount of oxygen, if not more, in terms of being able to heal those tissues that may be damaged. And obviously your brain is going to be first and foremost when it comes to that kind of injury. What else? I think those are all the things, yeah.
Yeah, these are great tips. I wanted to say, so that touches on the carbohydrates. Have you heard there's like a lot of new science on the ketogenic diet for preventing the bad symptoms of concussion? But the problem is that they said that you need to be on the ketogenic diet already. And then when you are on a ketogenic diet and you get concussed, you don't have as bad symptoms. But that would be hard for a fighter to be on ketogenic diet. Do you even know any athletes that are on like keto, like not athletes, but specifically fighters that are on ketogenic or like carnivore diets?
So I know of some fighters who have done it, and I will say it flat out, and they will agree with me that you will not be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I
Simple
agree.
as that.
You can't as a power athlete.
It's way too explosive. Way too explosive. There's been athletes who have done it. I know some guys that have tried it, and I saw their body physically, how they looked when they fought. I saw their energy levels while they fought, and then I spoke to them afterwards, and they were just like, yeah, that didn't really work out for me. Yeah. TJ Dillashaw from UFC was like the proponent for ketogenic diet, and then he popped for like every ped possible. So it's like he was able to be ketogenic, but he was also on a tons of peds. So, but even him, like he ended up losing and then got caught. But so you're not going to be the best version of yourself. Is it possible to do it? Absolutely. In terms of it, like helping
you disadvantage yourself. You disadvantage yourself so you might reduce symptoms of concussion, but you disadvantage yourself in a power, in a glycogen recovery. Yeah.
I'd rather be better so I don't get a head injury than be prepared for the head injury.
Yeah, and I was just interested to ask, because like I also speak to a lot of athletes and they tell me, oh, I'm a carnivore, I'm on ketogenic diet. And I'm like, really? And then they tell me, oh, but I break it before a fight or before a race and I have rice and honey. I'm like, well, then you're not really on a ketogenic diet or you're not really carnivore. So there's always like, I get it. Yeah, it's just.
I mean, that's essentially how I live now. Like I'm much more carnivorous than I ever was. But like I said earlier in our show, I base my carbohydrate intake based on my output in terms of what I'm doing metabolically. If I'm just lifting weights, for the most part, at my age now, I don't really eat breakfast anymore. Yeah. Which used to be so important for me to wake up right away, eat, because I had such a small window of awake time to eat. Because for me, like when I was training for a fight, it was like, I got to wake up and I have to train almost immediately. So I need to get something in my system. I need to train. Then I get something in my system again. Then I need to eat. Then I need to nap. Then I need to wake up and train again. And then I need to eat something. And then I need to eat something. And then it's time for bed. And I got to get my 8-9 hours of sleep, but I also have an hour and a half nap in the middle of the day. So there's so little time to actually get in the 4 hours of training that are required per day, plus all the food I have to eat, but to be able to digest it and use it for the next workout. So then it was like everything was just like I have to eat. Now it's like I don't have to do that, and if I don't need to eat, I don't eat.
Yeah, well, because now you're like a normal person, but being an elite athlete is not normal. It's not like it's stressful to the body. And, that's why I get so like really annoyed sometimes when people give like the blanket advice, like, oh yeah, ketogenic diet is healthy, everyone has to be on it. I'm like, oh yeah, well, if you're overweight and you're just like a average Joe, amazing for you. But if you're elite boxer, probably not. So
or elite runner or whatever, or if you want to win, if you want to win, then if you're just getting through it, sure, I get it. And if you want to just look good, if you want to look good at the beach, you want to look good in the mirror, 100%. Those diets work, and I'm sure you grew up in the bodybuilding community the way that I did. Those people looked great, but they couldn't really do much.
No, they can't do much. They don't live very long.
That's another thing. There's a lot of extracurriculars that go along with that. Yeah. But I grew up with athletes, that's why my body is the way that it is. Listen, if I wanted to be a big, strong guy, I wouldn't look like this. I want to be athletic. I want to be physical. Yeah. I want to be able to run, because I really think, and that's one thing that I think you and I have in common is running. Like I have a lot of friends and a lot of fighters who just hate to run. And I think running is a integral part of the human existence. I think we're built to run. I think we are good. We're that's how we hunted. That's how we track down animals, because we are endurance athletes by nature. And we're not as fast as a gazelle. We're not as fast as a deer. We're not as fast as the animals that are out there. But guess what? We can beat them in a long foot race, because they get tired and we don't. If you're in shape, you can run down, chase down, walk down, whatever, track an animal. So when people tell me like, oh, I don't run, I'm like, well, then you're going against humanity. You know, if you're that heavy that you can't run, you're going against nature. You know, I want to be able to run. I want to be able to persist and run and push on, because I think as in nature, human beings are endurance athletes. Have you heard this thing about the 100 men fighting a gorilla thing? I know this is like a huge.
Oh my God! Yesterday at our work lunch at Chief, we were talking about this. Like, what is this? Like, what do you think?
It's insanity, but it's just like this crazy viral thing. But it's exactly what I'm talking about. Human beings are endurance athletes. Gorillas are explosive power athletes.
It's so stupid.
It's so stupid, and I had to bring it up, and I hate that we're bringing it up.
Yeah.
I hate to bring it, but it's such a viral thing.
Yeah.
But I want
So
to
what do
hear
you
what
think?
you have to say. I think the gorilla. So okay. So I have some caveats. So
Okay.
I need to qualify my statement. The gorilla wins. The gorilla wins because human beings, as smart as we are, is as smart as we are. When you see a gorilla rip 20 guys' heads off, you stop wanting to win. You don't want to be the 21st guy. So listen, if they were animatrons and they were robots and they were human, like human bodies, but they didn't care about what was in front of them, I think actually the humans would win. But there's no goddamn way you're going to watch your friend get his arms ripped off and you're going to go in there and fight that thing. So the gorilla wins every time.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm glad we agree on this. And I'm glad you said that about the running. I love that. But you know what I want to ask? So, like, you're fit and healthy, you know, everything is working for you. Why did you actually quit or end your boxing career? What was the reason?
Injuries. I kept getting hurt. Yeah. I couldn't. All right, so I got hurt when I was younger, too. It wasn't like I was just like an old man who just like get broken down. But so I noticed Chris Algieri as an athlete changing. You know, I'd mentioned my 38-year-old, my 41-year-old body. This machine is different than the one it was when it was 28, right? And I noticed that. I remember when I was 28, and I remember when I was 32, and I remember when I was 35, and I remember when I was 37. And I remember distinct physical changes that happened to me. And because I was aware of the changes, I was able to adjust my style. Because my sports, it's not a speed sport. It's not running. It's not like it's a 20-yard dash or a 50-yard dash, and every step matters. And all I have to do is make sure that my first explosive step is this amount of time, my next explosive step is this amount of time, and I have to make sure that I explode off that fifth step, and I have to make sure that my last 20% of the race is as fast as my first 20% of the race. Boxing isn't like that. There's way too many variables, which makes it good because you can expand. Track athletes have some of the shortest careers possible because there's so little room. As soon as you start to decline, you're done. Everyone will pass you. Boxing isn't that way because there's a skill sport. There's a dramatic and massive skill aspect to the sport. You can transition because I might not be as fast as I used to be. I might not be as strong as I used to be. I might not have the endurance that I used to have, but I'm smarter now. And I can be more skillful. And I can make this guy miss. And I can control the space in the ring. And I can make sure that I'm moving in a certain way to make sure that those kind of punches don't hurt as much. And I can make sure that I don't get hit. And I can get more aware and be able to deal with certain things. I can steal rounds. I can learn how to cheat rounds. We call it old manning it. I can old man the round, and I can win portions of the round without working too hard. So there's a skill aspect and a strategic aspect of the sport. It's very different than kind of like running. So I knew as I was aging and getting slower, less reactive, less strong, less endurance, whatever, I was able to pick up those gaps in my physical ability with my mental ability and my physical skill and my skills and my technique. So I knew that my 37-year-old body, which is how old I was when I fought my last fight, was different than my 27-year-old body. And then I took a bad loss, and I took some time off, and I took about 6 months off, and then I came back, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm back. I'm gonna get back in the training camp. And as soon as I start camp, I'm doing my conditioning and getting ready, and I roll my ankle. I haven't rolled my ankle since I was in high school. So this was like mind-blowing to me. I'm like, I rolled my ankle. Like, how did I do that? I was running on some uneven turf. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I've rolled my ankle before. It didn't hurt me. This, I had to limp home. You know, almost had to take an Uber back to my house because it was like I rolled my ankle that bad. I'm like, oh man, okay, cool. I push off camp a little bit. I come back, getting back into shape again. I hurt my elbow. I'm like, oh man, my elbow. All right, I gotta. All right, I'll just push things off a little bit, couple weeks. Boom, get back. Next thing I knew, I pulled I pulled my hamstring. It's just like injury after injury after injury. I'm just like, oh man. And then I start realizing, I'm like, if I'm gonna make it through a training camp and actually, in order to get to a fight, I'm gonna have to pull back on how hard I train. And that's when I said, if I have to pull back on the way that I train, I won't be as fit as I need to be to perform at my best. And if I'm not at my best, I can't beat the best in the world. And if I can't beat the best in the world, I don't want to be here. And I had to make a decision that if I can't be the best in the world, and I had said this since I was a kid, I said, if I can't be the best in the world, this sport's way too dangerous for me to be in it. And when I realized that I couldn't get myself to the point where I could beat or best the best guys in the world, the guys who were at the top of the weight class, I was done. And I never looked back. If I can't be a world champion, I don't want to box. So once I realized that I couldn't be a world champion again, that was a hard thing to acknowledge, then it was actually pretty easy.
Yeah. That would have been a hard decision to make, though. But you have so much to do right now anyway. Like, your life is amazing. And you're still involved in boxing because your main gig now is boxing analysis and commentating. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still very much involved in the sport. But none of it's as cool as being a world champion.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than being a world champion. There's nothing better than being the top of the sport. There's nothing better than fighting. It was my favorite thing of all time to do. But acknowledging that I can't be that guy anymore.
Yeah.
I said it in my retirement acknowledgement. I'm like, that guy is dead. That Chris Algieri is dead and gone. I'm no longer that person. That portion of me is gone. Because otherwise, that portion is going to drive this guy down.
Yeah.
In not only in psychological and physical and mental ways, physically, because he's going to make me fight. And if I'm going to fight, I'll fight till I die. And that's not where I want to be. So that guy has to die. And now this is the new guy. And now my favorite thing in the world to do is commentate fights. I love being ringside. I love commentating fights. And I'm going to do this till I can't. And I love doing it, so that's where I'm at.
You're amazing. That requires a lot of mental strength and emotional maturity and like letting go of your ego. That would be hard, especially for men. So I think that's very admirable to be like that. But I wanted to ask you one thing, and you don't have to answer if it's too personal. You know how a lot of fighters and boxers have like a lasting neurological damage from all the concussions and stuff. Do you have any of that, or did you just...
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of, but they often show up later. So I won't know until I know. I don't feel like I have any of them now. I speak for a living. We've been speaking for an hour. I think it'd be really difficult to tell whether I was neurologically impaired or not.
You seem pretty normal to me.
Yeah, I seem pretty, yeah. And for the most part, the people around me say the same thing. But in terms of my coordination, I feel fine. My balance, I feel fine. But it's kind of one of those things. One, it's insidious, so it creeps up on you, which is why another reason why I train as much as I do, and I stay in a boxing gym, because I want to understand if my balance is off, and if I can't move the same way I used to, I still challenge myself to do balanced exercises and things like that. I'm always kind of thinking about that. I'm always testing myself for a reason. Another reason why I like kettlebells, because there's a lot of proprioception involved in the movement. And that's one of the things that goes a lot with fighters is proprioception. Balance is one of the first things to go. Speech obviously goes, but your brain's really complicated. Depending on where the damage is, you know, my mother died of brain cancer a couple months ago. And she has had strokes in the past, and depending on what portion of the brain is affected, other parts can be completely normal. So it's definitely something that I'm super aware of. It's definitely something that I'll never not be afraid of. And I think if any fighter says that they're not, they're lying to themselves, or they're just unaware. They're unaware that there's this thing inside you that could become a big problem later on. Because I've seen it firsthand, you know, the punch drunk pug syndrome, where you've got the guys who the drop foot where their foot will kick out, the stammering, the thick tongue, the balance of coordination. Listen, I go to Hall of Fame dinners. I see these fighters, great fighters, championship level fighters, fantastic, amazing Hall of Famers, and these guys have severe neurological damage. And were they like that when they were my age? I don't know, but I do know that it can happen later on. So it's something that I'm always aware of. It's another reason why I keep myself in such good shape. It's another reason why I continually test myself physiologically. It's another reason why I make sure that I am fueling my body the best way possible. I'm keeping the inflammation down. I'm making sure I'm getting my sleep. Sleep has been big for me. And just making sure I'm staying hydrated and healthy and active and physical and all those things. But
yeah, that's amazing. Thanks for your honesty. I have last 2 questions that I ask every guest. If you could give only one health or fitness advice to everyone out there, what would it be? And what is your favorite book? And it can be any book.
Okay. So one, and this is it's kind of a proximity thing, I guess, like a recency bias, I should say, is sleep. Man, really prioritizing your sleep after your 20s. Because you're in your 20s, it's weird. You don't need to sleep. Because I remember my 20s. I mean, I was out all night hanging out, drinking, hanging out,
yep.
And then I'd wake up in the morning and I would train people at 4:30 a.m. or I worked at a bakery at one point early morning, so before I go to school, and then I'd work all day or go to school all day and then train in the afternoon and then go out all night. I don't know. I feel like I didn't sleep in my 20s at all. But once my 30s hit, really focusing on sleep has been a tremendous game changer. And it's really helped me in my 40s. Like I feel really good at 41, coming on 42. My output is great. My energy is great. I wake up feeling good. I'm very regular in my sleep schedule, and just everything. Everything is really. I think I really put that a lot on my focus on sleep. I think that's been a big one.
Yeah.
Now, my favorite book. Oof.
I ask these questions for myself because, I don't really watch anything. I just read books. So ask every guest for their favorite book, and that's my next book I read. Okay,
so I got a good one. I don't say it's my favorite book, but it's like it popped into my head for a good reason. So I'm going to go with that. The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And it's what I took from the book when I read it, because it was a very transitionary period of my life when I first read a book. Because I always think of books. I've read books multiple, like there are a bunch of books I've read in like multiple times. Like Siddhartha. I love the book Siddhartha. I've read it over time. That's probably a book I would love, would say the most. But this one, for whatever reason, popped in my head. So whenever I read a book, whatever portion of my life that had happened, it leaves a fragment in me. And the Fountainhead left something in me, and then essentially it was, whatever it is that you do, be the best at that. And I think that's such a powerful thing that I took from that book. If you're a bus driver, be the best damn bus driver of that route. If you're a hairdresser, be the best damn hairdresser in that place. And I always felt that when which could go on to, like, you were asking about what's a health and fitness thing. Whenever guys ask me, like, hey, what's your number one thing you would tell a young up-and-coming fighter? Be the best guy in the room. No matter what. Always be the best in the room. And if you're not,
do
work
your
harder.
best.
Yeah, and if you're not, work harder till you're that point. And guess what? If you are, go find a better room. So I just think that, from that book, there's a lot of narratives in that book, a lot of weird narratives too, but that's just what I took from that book. There's also some very weird things in that book. I don't know why that one popped in my head. But it just I just remember taking from that book, like, whatever it is that be that version of yourself. And there's nothing wrong with being the best bus driver. Like if that's your calling, or if that's where your ceiling is, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that was my takeaway from that book when I kind of read, or well, that's what I remember from when I read it, however many years ago during that transitionary period. But yeah, just whatever you're doing, just be the best at it. And if you want to be the best in the world, then you got to find a really tough room.
Yeah. That's such a good advice. It was awesome, Chris. I could keep talking to you for like 10 hours, but not enough time.
We can do this again. We can do more.
We can do it again, and I need to call you more often as well. I always learn so much from you. Thank you so much. Like, it was amazing. I can't wait to release this episode. Yeah, and I'll talk to you soon in the next few days.
Absolutely. Yes. Stay in touch, please. But this is fun.
I will. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you for listening. Let us know in the comments below what topics interest you, and don't forget to follow us.